We are going to be having our day long through the day, and we're going to be looking at perfectionism as a theme, working with that tendency. The plan, as far as I know, is that I'm going to offer some reflections on that now, and then this afternoon, Grace will offer some Qigong and also some reflections on working with perfectionism. And we'll have time for Q&A at the end of the day. But I think also this morning, some Q&A as well. I've been noticing how perfectionism and idealism are related. We may tend towards wanting the world to be ideal or to create something that's ideal. Because with our imagination, we can certainly concoct a vision of something that's very high and ideal. And we want our organizations to be that way, our relationships maybe also, and the people in our life. And we want to be as close to ideal as we can ourselves sometimes. And that leads to this, wanting to be perfect or wanting things to be perfect. But when we really look at how things are, of course, it's not ideal. And one of the things you see oftentimes in monastic life is there can be a sense that people have that's very idealistic about the way monastics should be or the way monasteries should be. And if it's held very tightly, then it's easy to become disillusioned and to miss the beneficial offerings that are available because they're not really ideal. When we are, in my experience, perfectionism was part of I think, a defense strategy that I developed very early on in my life, to be as perfect as possible to avoid getting into trouble. And trouble was just, in my experience, kind of a continual reprimanding, whether I did anything wrong or not. And as a child, then if I could try to figure out what kind of behavior would avoid that, that was my go-to plan. And it's interesting to see how our conditioning brings about these patterns that then become kind of solidified, and if we don't examine them, they continue to be, kind of what feels like a pillar of our character. And yet it's all changeable. So the lovely thing about recognizing the impermanence of everything in this world, including ourselves, including our own tendencies and behaviors and beliefs and habits, is that we can change them. We can become aware, conscious of what's happening. With perfectionism, then we notice that we might feel perfectionism or idealism. We blame what's not perfect, and that can be turned inwards to blame ourselves. oh, if I had done that better, then this person wouldn't be unhappy with me. And we become unhappy with ourselves. So when we notice this, when we start to reflect on it, then it's possible to recognize I want to say, the harshness in it and the unrealistic nature of it, and what arises in me at this point is compassion for that wish to do things in a way that we are above reproach. It's not possible. And even when we are, you might say, in our own estimation, doing things as well as possible, even if there's no real basis for blame, it still happens. So it's like, okay, how do we open up to just accepting this constant ebb and flow of things are pretty good, things are not so good, including what we do, what we say. And how do we balance that or put that in context with something like wanting to keep the precepts very well, or wanting to, do a good job for some purpose. So this is where we can start to really bring in more wisdom and more understanding of what it means for things to be good enough. What does it mean for it to be good enough? When we really start to look at what we actually need in life, those are this kind of idea of renunciation, letting go, and really recognizing, what are the fundamental needs? What are the fundamental requirements? And to see that they're actually not as complicated or extensive as we might have thought. And then we start to notice what's good enough in our own behaviors. And if we develop our wisdom and our compassion, I think that the joy of, for example, keeping the precepts becomes quite natural in us. This wish to not harm. If we're coming to it from a personality point of view or a sense of self perspective, I think this is where the perfectionism or the self-blame can really flare up, because then we're actually, it's like me being kind, me keeping the precepts. If it's coming from that place, I think it's harder to really have the sense of what's good enough and how to really develop that power that the Buddha talked about, the power of blamelessness. I was just talking about this yesterday afternoon at Stanford, the 4 powers and the 5 fears that we see in Anguttara Nikaya 9.5. These powers that help us let go of the 5 fears of losing your livelihood or getting a bad reputation, being uncomfortable in groups, the fear of death and the fear of what comes after death. And many of you have probably heard me talk about this sutta before, because I think it's so beautiful. So you have these fears that are common in our life. And I relate this to perfectionism, like how much do we feel like, well, if I do it better, if I'm more perfect, then I don't have to be afraid of these things. But that's not what the Buddha says. He said the powers, at least this is how I take it in, the power of wisdom, knowing what's wholesome and unwholesome, what's skillful and unskillful, and the power of energy to cultivate the wholesome, cultivate what's skillful, and avoid and let go of the unskillful and not develop or cultivate that. And the power of blamelessness. And boy, that's a real opportunity to have the perfectionism come up. How do we become blameless? And I think it's this wisdom applied to our development of virtue, where we really start to be able to see, what we can do to find that balance or that nuance of putting in our efforts to follow the precepts and not harm as much as we can, and know that it's never going to be perfect, and to really have the skill to recover, the skill to make amends, the skill to refine without self-blame, without self-admonishment. It's more about reflection and learning and determining to refine our behavior. And compassion is such a large part of this. Seeing for ourselves, that we really exist in this world that is never perfect, and that we can also be content with our own efforts. And the fourth power that he talks about in that sutta is the power of sustaining favorable relationships. And I feel like it's in relationship that we often are seeing the reflection of what we're doing, our efforts, our decisions, our development of our skills in blossoming in our virtue, in our faith, in our abilities, in our communications, and being able to make those refinements without a stiffness, without a perfectionist, idealistic attitude, without those harsh requirements, but with compassion and ease. When we develop relationships where we can take care of each other, support each other, help each other see the blind spots that we have based on our own conditioning and our experience, then we can really I think, fill in those areas that we find challenging with something more supportive. So I see that certainly in my relationship with Ayya Chitananda. She's able to open up for me areas of experience that I haven't had. And we can together, I think, really broaden our understanding and our compassion for the different things that come up in life and the different ways of approaching them. I feel like one of the practices that I find so beneficial is really looking at what is it that brings a sense of ease into a situation. Sometimes we can become so tight and rigid around what we think should be done that I think we lose track of the reality of what's good enough, what's really never going to be perfected. Can we relax around that? It's interesting when we look at our own paths and our development on the path. I think if we can, we might be able to notice how the development of the Noble Eightfold Path is coming to fulfillment in you. Really attending to those components of Sila, Samadhi, and Panya, and how they all work together to bring more relief and to bring more wisdom, more sensitivity to what's beautiful, supportive, and comforting in this life that doesn't have any requirement from the sense world. Those parts that really are from the heart. So I'd like to hear any comments or questions you have. Anything I said struck a chord. Marilyn?
Doesn't sound like I'm being contrary again, but somebody pointed out something to me, and I think it makes a lot of sense, which is that it's already perfect here. It's you know, water still runs downhill. This that we laugh. There's cause and effect. This is perfect, and we progress. This is perfect. Things. It's we don't have to strive. It's already perfect. It's working the way it's supposed to work or something. I mean, even war, you can say, well, that's not perfect, but it's the effect of the hatred that's in the world. It's the cause and effect. It's a system that works quite perfectly.
Mm-hmm.
And I find that helpful, especially when it came up was we were going to a retreat thing, and the hotel got all mixed up, and we it was a big mess. And the guy who was in charge of it just turned to us and said, "It's perfect. It's just perfect. This is the way it's supposed to be. You do this, and this is what happens." And
Mm-hmm.
seemed to viewing the world that way, I found very helpful.
Mm-hmm. It
Um,
brings the ease that I'm like pointing at into it. Yeah.
so I hope that's okay.
Yeah. I think it is perfect. I think so. Yeah. So this is like what we can do with the mind, right? We can think about it from that perspective of, well, this is how it works. This is so it's perfect, right? Or we can look at it like the insight I had a long time ago that everything is falling apart. That's its nature. And there was all this joy that arose because then, we don't have to work so hard to try to keep it all from falling apart. That's just its nature. So whether in the mind we're like, okay, that's perfect. That is that is the nature of reality. Whether we put it that way or we put it as, it's all imperfect. And that's the nature of reality. Whatever it is that I don't think that it's really opposed. It's just how do we frame it? Language is imperfect. It's like how can we, or maybe it's perfect, but how do we frame it that brings the ease to the mind and still we have the wisdom to discern around what really isn't okay in terms of what we do to make those good decisions still. It's not trying to say that war is something we want to support or promote, for example. We know that. And yet, seeing that this is what it comes from greed, hatred, and delusion, that's just the truth. It's Dhamma. I think at one level, what we're talking about is how to live according to Dhamma. And when we're trying to make something perfect that can't possibly be perfect, like our own personalities, that's not Dhamma. The Dhamma is, well, there's this whole collection of processes in us, mentally and physically, and it's coming together and falling apart, arising and ceasing. When the Buddha said, "This is what's important for us to notice, to see," and when we see that, we can, because when the wisdom is more and more revealed to us, the more ease we feel. We can let go more. Thank you, Marilyn. Neil?
Yeah. What came up for me as you were talking was, for me, um, the desire for perfection leads to inertia.
Mm.
I think of it as laziness, but I try to be kinder to myself and call it inertia. Like I'm looking around my apartment right now and realizing I don't clean because if everything can't be cleaned perfectly, then I don't want to bother cleaning at all. Like I know there will be more dust tomorrow, so why bother? Um, that's just one example. Um, and what also occurred to me was that there are two places in my life where I don't judge myself about imperfections, and that's in my singing and in my work with the precepts. And I had two perfectly good examples last night. One Friday a month, my voice teacher has a music party, and a bunch of us get together and we sing songs for each other and then have some food and chat. And I caught myself um, kind of making a joke with one of the other people that as soon as I said it, I realized I was kind of being critical of her. And I immediately thought, okay, the next time I see her, I should apologize. And she probably won't even notice that I did it, but I needed to acknowledge it to her. And it wasn't like I was beating myself up. It was just like, okay, here's another chance I'll have another chance to be better at this.
Mm-hmm.
And one of the songs I sang, my voice cracked on a note that it shouldn't necessarily crack on. And I didn't think, oh God, I've ruined the song. I thought, all right, well, there's a place that I have to work, be more conscious of my technique when I sing that particular part of that song, because that's what happened. I just sort of let go of the technique. And so, but like with most other things in life, with relationships, um, if they can't be perfect, why bother? So, yeah. So I mean, it's not a question. It's just this is what you've made me a little more aware of. Damn
Can
it!
I ask you a question?
What?
Can I ask you a question?
Of course.
So you don't have to answer this question. Maybe it's more of a reflection, just digging a little bit deeper into why things like cleaning or relationships go that direction. Like what is the heart trying to avoid, or what is the feeling behind it? You know, of course, when you talk about cleaning, then my experience of, you know, not cleaning the bathroom when I was staying at Ajahn Gunhas, and you know, that night he's saying, "Gotta clean the bathroom" to everybody. You know, he's talking to, "Gotta clean the bathroom. You gotta clean the bathroom, and clean your bathroom every day. Clean it twice a day." You know, and and I mean, I know he's talking to me, and what came out of that is really seeing the inertia, like you're saying, and the feeling of the inertia that I can have sometimes, and how downpulling it is. And then, okay, so when I feel that feeling, it's like, okay, I'm going to dig into something right now, because I don't want that mental state. I don't want that kind of fog in the heart. Just some thoughts.
Yeah, what you said, what is the heart avoiding in those moments? I need to look at that. I'm trying to look at it now, and I'm not coming up with anything, but you're right. There's something there.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And
Thank
it's so beautiful that you have the other examples of keeping the precepts and the singing that have the very different feeling about it, you know, that fluidity and encouragement.
I guess because those are maybe I hadn't thought of it this way. Maybe those are the two things I place the most importance on in my life.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Yeah. Thank you.
Yeah. Thank you too. Holly?
So this is a really apropos way to look at stuff going on in my household right now. So, so the perfectionism related to relationship. So 2 days ago, or 3 days ago, Gene fell while hiking with some friends and broke his 11th rib.
Oh.
So the first 2 days were pretty much caregiving because it rattles him and drops him down.
Yeah.
Mentally as well.
Painful too. I mean,
well, very painful, and he's 80.
Yeah.
And then the last day and a half, he's been ready for some independence. and he's been cranky. I would be cranky if my if my rib was broken, but
Yeah.
so yeah, just in the relating and how to be caring and allowing of a spouse and taking care of myself. It's like it's never going to be perfect, and I want to do it well. I want to be caring well for myself and my spouse, and it's just a quagmire. Just I struggle to uh, let the situation while he's stuck in the lazy boy recliner um, and not eating well and resisting going to walks, even though the doctor said if you don't go for walks and breathe, your lungs will seal up down the lower part and you'll get an infection. He says, well, I had a pneumonia shot. I said, it just goes on and on. You know, the Tylenol, it's like he had 3 Tylenol bottles. One was past its expiration date. I went out for an errand and he had mixed up 2 other bottles, and one was a Xarelto bottle that he labeled Van drugs, which was actually Tylenol, and the other one was in the garbage, and the one in the garbage was the only one that was not out of date yet. So I had to, I had to ask him questions, just like, oh my God. So and then it gets tense. So I feel challenged right now with accepting the level of chaos.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, it's like it's what you're saying. It's not perfect. It's a messy human life existence in this world is messy. And I think the one thing that we can develop is some patience, patient endurance. I mean, we have to have it with ourselves because old habits and patterns continue to spring up, and we need to have the patience to, be with this again and let it unfold and observe the dukkha and all of that. I know you've got the tools, and just knowing that there are so many situations in life where those same tools are needed. And it's okay. It's okay to feel that loss of patience and have to go back and regroup.
Yeah, I think the hardest part is coping with the volume of dukkha when it's a big rush like this.
Yeah. Keeping in mind that it's not going to be the same level of rush all the time. Yeah. Thank you, Holly. Anne and Ed.
Hi, good morning. I just wanted to introduce Ed, who knows I as well.
Hi.
And it just seemed like a good day for him to sit with me. And he said, sure. So here he is. So
Hi, everyone.
It's really good to see you, Ed.
how are you doing?
I'm doing well, and everything is going perfect in my life. I have the luxury of enjoying my 90th year.
Yay.
This feels,
Nice.
everything seems perfect. Everything is in coordination with my being 90 years old. So I'm very grateful.
Wonderful. Well, we look forward to seeing you in person again sometime. I hope that isn't too long.
Has been, yes.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah, you're welcome. I'm going to take a look at this comment in the chat that we just saw. I don't see myself as being especially perfectionist, but making mistakes still stings. I think it is the sense of self arising, solidifying, tightening, those situations where I feel I may be judged. Yeah. Yeah. And, looking at, there's more. Oh, there's more? No? Oh, okay. Looking at noticing those feelings, recognizing how natural that is, and the awareness of it is key. Being able to observe that. It's like, oh yeah, my personality, my sense of self doesn't like this. But I don't have to own that as actually being me. I don't have to solidify it. I know what you said there, it solidifies, but just observing that it solidifies really is key. Standing in that place of awareness, of observing, where the sense of self isn't solidifying around it, or the concern for being judged isn't there. And then noticing the compassion and kindness for ourselves arising. It's like, oh, that's happening. That's okay. Understandable. I don't have to operate or I don't have to let that be the motivation for how I'm behaving or what I do. Yeah, thank you. Thanks, Marilyn. What's
Just if I could add to that a little bit, I think it seems like I don't feel the need to be perfect, but I don't like being imperfect.
Yeah. It's okay to not like it, but to know that there's, it's going to be like this. It's how it is. But yeah, understandable. Yeah, how do we come to rest? Accept the imperfections of life. It's funny, isn't it? It's like there's all this encouragement to improve and develop. And yet we also have to accept the imperfections in that process. So what do we accept and what do we not accept? Well, we don't want to continue treading water in human life. We want to see the way things actually are. So we want to definitely purify the mind. And, again, it's so easy to fall into isn't purifying the mind a kind of perfectionism? No, I don't think so. I think it really is a shift away from the sense of me and mine, the sense of self, to really taking our stand in Dhamma, in our awareness of what we're experiencing. Suzanne?
Yeah, thank you for your comments, Ayya. They're always beautiful. I was really touched by what Holly said. I'm so sorry you're going through that. I understand it. It made me think about what I'm going through with this broken leg. And probably you guys don't know, but 13 years ago, I had a congenital brain bleed. It's why my talking sounds kind of marbly. And that impacted the whole left side. So this broken leg has never, well, the break is healed, but I'm not really walking like I used to because of that brain. And it's so interesting. Like the mind sometimes says, gosh, this is so great to be so slow and to be like, I've had teachers before say, yeah, it's just no matter how old you are or what your condition, remember aging, sickness, and death. Like, it's almost like you are aging. We're all aging all the time, but I've seen teachers who were really young who almost looked like they were old and sick. So blessings to you for Holly and all of us for what we're going through. And it reminded me, this week I heard a talk by Tanisaro Bhikkhu about the committee members. And I'd heard Ajahn Amro talk about committee members, and I never knew, I don't know who started it, but I really like it. And so that's what's going on with me in this leg thing. It's like there are different committee members, right? Like one says, oh, you should do your physical therapy. And one says, no, you should take a nap. And, they're all saying different things. And so I'm thinking too of Holly and your spouse, how, it's like his committee's conflicting with your committee, and it's very stressful. It's enough to have one committee. So I'm curious, I'm also curious about, then the mind wants to say, oh, that's the self. But it's all the committee members are the self to let go, right? So what do you have to say, Ayya, about the committee members?
Well, I think it's obvious that that's what's going on in the mind. There are these different strands, these different voices. And what I was reminded of as you were talking were some of the passages in Stillness Flowing in Ajahn Chah's biography, where he would have these conversations with himself out in the jungle of Thailand, and he's wandering, on his own and practicing, and he would have these internal discussions that really would lead to more wisdom. And, this kind of questioning those voices and investigating what they're saying. Is this true? Is this the course of action I feel is going to be valuable to take at this moment? And maybe we take a few steps in that direction and find out, no, this isn't the way I need to go, whatever. But it's certainly true. Sometimes I was noticing recently that sometimes I'll have a thought in my mind about doing something a certain way or avoiding doing it a certain way. And then I would just go do exactly the opposite. It's like, yes, the committee members, and these are things that really don't have any significance, like they don't have any real impact on other people or, that kind of thing. But it's like, it's just interesting. The mind is sometimes kind of crazy, does all kinds of things. And just to, again, have the wisdom to see, well, where does it really matter? And where does it not? And can I accept this mess? Whether we call it perfect as it is, or we recognize its inherent messiness, keeping in mind the ongoing cultivation of the path and the opening to insight and to seeing what actually isn't messy. There is a part that doesn't fall apart. What is that? Dhamma, Nibbana, awareness. What words do we want to use? can we notice when that experience comes into our life? Joni?
Good morning, everyone. It's good to be here, and I wanted just to do a thank you. Can you hear me?
Yes, loud and clear.
Thank you, everyone, for sharing. And I just wanted to share a little story about perfectionism. So perfectionism is something that is very deeply ingrained in me. And I've been struggling a lot with kind of a deepening of my autoimmune illness and the what has been happening to my body. And so I was meditating the other day and remembering, just working with different aspects of it. And a thought popped into my mind of that I'm failing in this process of aging, sickness, and death. Like I'm not doing it well enough. And when that happened, I just had to laugh, because it was sort of like, I mean, how can you fail at aging, sickness, and death? So
That's great.
that's my story of the perfectionism in my life that runs through my life. So
Beautiful. Yeah. I'm so glad it hit that point, And you can remember, bring to mind that feeling when you start to think about doing something else perfectly. Yeah.
Yeah, it always helps to laugh, to laugh at it.
Yep. Yep.
Like laughing at your demons.
Yeah. And feeding them, being kind and compassionate to them. And it's like I don't really expect the conditioning to disappear. I know it does change. I've changed a lot. But to just be able to observe it, see it, recognize it out there in front of me, not take it as me and mine. It's helpful. Would being afraid of making mistakes or being blamed to be one of the causes to be, see if I can scroll down here, perfectionistic, or to be called perfectionist, even though one doesn't want to be a perfectionist? Yeah, I think so. This is what I've found, not wanting to be blamed, not wanting to make mistakes, wanting to avoid, it just so much goes back to being a small child, and wanting to avoid kind of disapproval of my mother, or, somehow getting reprimanded. And it took a long time to understand her and her anxieties, and then to have compassion for that and to be less affected by it. But the personality still might react in those ways. As we become more aware and we can see it, we can have compassion for that and not buy into it. We don't have to follow that track. So it's good, I think, to recognize that we have formed these defenses for a reason. But as adults, we don't have to keep going in that same way. If we're willing to really look at what we're experiencing and how it feels, take care of ourselves, I think we can recognize that it's possible to be at ease, to be happy. Sarah?
Um, so I was feeling a lot of suffering, a lot of dukkha around the experience of watching my husband fall apart. So with his dementia, so yesterday he left some dirty dishes in the kitchen, and that's been happening more. Like, he doesn't clean up quite as well as he used to, and I have this feeling of like things are falling apart, and I had a really strong internal reaction to that. And so I was sitting here like, it really resonated when you said, that things are falling apart. That's the truth of things. Everything's falling apart. And so I was sitting here really feeling it in my body a lot. And then I flashed on like my mom, because I have a lot of compassion for my mom. So she had a tough time, and she used to, like, we weren't allowed to sit on our beds during the day because you'd then have to smooth out the bed. Mm-hmm. It was like that defense mechanism that she had of like, don't create any mess, because then you don't have to clean it up. So you just don't live in the house. Right. You actually inhabit your own bedroom. And I just had this rush of compassion for her, and then it sort of helped like direct that at myself. And it was this whole process that sort of unfolded. And thank you. I mean, that wouldn't have happened unless I'd been here this morning. So thank you.
Yeah, wonderful. Anything from the room here? Yes, Elizabeth? Maybe she comes up. Yeah, why don't you come over here? And you can hop up a little bit. You can sit here on the edge. Okay. Right here. If you want. There you go.
Good morning, everyone. I'm a really terrific perfectionist.
She's a perfect perfectionist.
I'm a perfect, but I was just thinking about maybe I should just, and I do more, be kind to my perfectionism. I mean, sometimes I'm in the middle of something and then, I can, my daughter has a dog and she'll say, leave it. And sometimes I just say to myself, leave it. And that works. But anyway, I just thought, geez, I think I'm getting kinder towards the perfectionist tendency, and that's very nice. Yeah. I mean, I'd like to let go more, but just being kinder is a good direction.
Yeah, thank you, Elizabeth. Come on, Ariane. Yeah, there you go. That's it. Yeah.
Hi, everyone. So I think it was earlier it must have been last New Year's, where I went to this. It may have been like a day long, or it was something at the Berkeley Olympic Meditation Center, and I realized I sat next to someone, and we both recognized each other as former elementary school classmates of one another that we hadn't seen each other since then, I don't think. It's amazing how similar we look. But I remember during our talking to one another that I forget what this subject was we were supposed to be talking about, but this former classmate of mine was talking all about her perfectionism. And it made me realize that I think we probably both got a lot of perfectionism from the school we went to, because it was a very, very academically rigorous school. Like, it had a reputation for being one of the most, pressure cooker schools in the area. And I remember my classmate was, if anything, even, a level above me, better grades, artistic, more athletic. But it made me realize, like, oh, wow, I think a lot of this came from that school environment. And it also made me appreciate an aspect of the perfectionism, which was, having, it's good to have high standards for yourself in some contexts. So kind of going back to what Elizabeth was saying about being kind to your perfectionism, I think for me, it's just reflecting on how that was just a chunk of what I was growing up. And I have to learn to appreciate that chunk growing up and learn how to work with it in a way that maximizes its use, but also isn't like overbearing in life. Just realizing it's just one thing in life, one part of who I was growing up. It doesn't have to be the whole thing. So
beautiful. Thank you.
It's a
Ariane.
good story.
Yeah. Paula?
Yeah, it's interesting what you just said, Ariane, because what was bubbling up for me is, yeah, I know I'm a perfectionist. I mean, was sort of my conditioning, but not in a bad way, just that's how things were done when I grew up. My mom and dad were very organized, and it's made me rigid in that way, but that's a strength in a lot of ways. And so I feel like there's like a continuum of perfectionism that runs through some of our lives. And to see and utilize the strength of it, but then also to see the drawbacks when you feel you must do something just the right way, which I notice I do sometimes. I can't write a letter without correcting every single letter. It has to be capitalized or uncapitalized or text and things like that. And that always causes me a bit of dukkha. But that's where I notice it. Like, oh, I just can't let that be. So my feeling is, I was thinking that this, like you've talked about how arahants still have their personalities a little bit.
Yeah.
And, this part of us may never go away. But when it causes dukkha, you have to attend to it. That's what I was thinking. So.
Yep. Well, I appreciated you finding the link on the calendar that didn't work, and I fixed it. So thanks, Paula. Perfectionism for the win.
Thank you, Paula. Peg?
There. I agree with Paula that trying to do things well is a strength. But I also know in my own case, it causes so much suffering because it goes beyond just trying to do well. It's because it's about the self, and it tightens around the self. And I really appreciate the emphasis you're putting today on compassion and kindness, because, this is what you've talked about with your childhood. I recognize and identify with a lot. And, that's the part that's solidified over the years. And I need to recognize it, and I need to be kind to it, because that's the only thing I can do.
Yeah.
Thank you. This has been a very good discussion.
Yeah. Thank you, Peg. Yeah, I think you've said it, all of you. This, when is it too much? It's like when there's dukkha. Dukkha is the indicator. The Buddha had it nailed. Look at the dukkha. Understand where it's coming from. Let go. Yeah. And we can help each other. We also need a lot of kindness there, compassion, understanding. Yeah, Suzanne?
So here's a question, because I've heard a lot of people say they would consider themselves perfectionists. I do too. And I have this memory that maybe a long time ago, there was a study on people who are practitioners. Not to say that we're better, but oftentimes, isn't it true that oftentimes, well, I would say we come into this with karma, and isn't part of the karma the perfectionism?
I think it varies quite a lot. Are you saying you think that practitioners are more likely to be perfectionists?
There was some study about how people who are drawn to the practice, they didn't use the word perfectionism. I can't remember. I'll go back and look. But there is some, it seems like there's some kind of karma that brings in an awareness of this perfectionism. It's something about the awareness too. It's not just the perfectionism. I don't know. It's just, that's all I'm asking, I think, is what is the karma behind all this? Isn't there a karma behind this awareness of perfectionism?
I think that just the human condition, with all of its dukkha, with all of its, greed, hatred, and delusion, is the real motivation to step onto the path. And it is true that we might go round and round in many lifetimes doing the same thing, but then there's that moment of faith or insight enough to recognize that, oh, there's a way out of this. I'm not sure it's about perfectionism. Maybe there is something about it, I think, just wanting to find a way out of the cycle of suffering.